This right here, Russian central bank governor visits Iran to strengthen financial ties. This has the old Ezekiel 38 scenario coming together here because you got Russia, Rosh, Gog Magog, Iran, Persia. This is kind of that coalition. They're continuing to build their military and their economic ties to each other. Are they not? I'm guessing that's why you put that in here, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the point is there is this invasion in the end times that we believe is yet future. It's given by Ezekiel, 2,600 years ago, and the prophecy that is, and it's just eerie, how the whole thing is coming into focus. So we would expect the nations involved in this invasion to start cooperating with each other ahead of time. And so virtually every headline you read today deals with not just the existence of these nations with a hostile intent towards Israel, but they're cooperating with each other. They're cooperating with each other militarily. They're running military exercises together, along with China, and along with some of the other players mentioned in Ezekiel 38. And this article is talking about how they're cooperating with each other financially, to the point where, as you read this article, they're talking sort of the way the BRICS banking system is talking. We don't need the dollar anymore. Dump the dollar. And so that fits another prophetic theme of everything moving away from the West, as the center of action, into the East. And just any way you slice it, an article like this is describing the setting of the stage for Ezekiel's invasion.
So we're talking about Gog Magog. That's what we're talking about. Then we're going to move into another one now, and that is the rise of anti-Semitism. The rise of anti-Semitism. Here we go. Outraged critics rip this CUNY law grad's hate-filled commencement speech, demand billions in tax dollars be stripped. I agree. Here she is with her full hijab on, which Annie Cyrus made the point that she's actually wearing it correctly. She says a lot of these folks that wear this hijab don't wear it correctly. She's wearing it correctly. She's got her ears covered. She's got it right down underneath her chin. She knows what she's doing. She's wearing this absolutely correct. I listened to this speech, and in this speech, she denounces Israel in the most anti-Semitic terms possible. She's a massive defender of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. I mean, this woman is a full-on racist, in my opinion, Jew hater. And there she was. Did you listen to the speech? I listened to it.
I did. I read the article and I went and listened to the 5-minute speech, if we can call it a speech. To me, it was more of a harangue than anything else. But it's important to understand she was actually nominated by her classmates, as their official speaker at this city of New York law school. So it's taxpayer money, hard at work. And one of the things that's very interesting about her harangue is she connects, and I've been teaching this, I've been trying to alert people to this for a long time. Anti-Israelism is connected to critical race theory. The identical arguments that the critical race theorist uses to argue that America is illegitimate, we're supposedly a genocidal power. They use those identical arguments concerning the modern state of Israel, that it's a genocidal power, it's an apartheid state. And so both Israel has to be torn down in their way of thinking, as does the United States of America. Replaced with what exactly? Well, replaced with their vision of the red-green axis. So that they hate Israel and they hate the United States simultaneously. And I'll bet she has never been exposed to, I think I actually have a slide on it, the work of Jacques-Paul Gaultier. There might be a slide there next to the book by Joan Peters entitled From Time Immemorial. I bet you as a budding lawyer, and she's not yet a lawyer because she's just a law grad, she hasn't passed the bar exam yet, but when she becomes a lawyer, she might want to familiarize herself with these sources of law, because both the Joan Peters book and the Jacques I think his middle name is Paul Goutier material, demonstrate irrefutably legally that the nation of Israel is not doing anything wrong. You can think whatever you want about Israel, but you can't call her illegal. You can't call Israel occupied territory. And I bet with all of her law knowledge, supposedly, I use that in quotation marks from this school, that she's never been exposed to the other side of the coin concerning what Israel's legal rights are. And you'll notice that her speech doesn't even reference these sources. It's just sort of a one sided harangue against Israel as an illegal occupier. And of course, we got to throw into the mix the United States of America as an apartheid genocidal power, along with the New York Police Department and everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's another one. We're talking about anti-Semitism. We went from Gog Magog to anti-Semitism. The Zionist Organization of America. The Zionist Organization of America. Dear Mr. President, this is to the White House, dated May 23rd. Over the eve of Passover 2023, you assured the Jewish community that you stand with them and that you are committed to the safety of the Jewish people. You recognize that the expression of Jew hatred is a, quote, stain on the soul of our nation, end quote, and you committed our nation to condemning anti-Semitism, quote, at every turn, end quote. It is therefore imperative that your forthcoming action plan to combat anti-Semitism recognize the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism as the one and only official definition of anti-Semitism that will be used by the federal government. Why are they writing this letter? What's the meat of this? Because I don't want to read the whole letter. Tell me what the gist of it is. Because what is it? It's 2 full pages.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is the Biden administration is about to change the policy related to how to define anti-Semitism. And they're scrapping what's called the IHRA policy, which stands for International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance policy. And they're about to come up with a definition of anti-Semitism that is so narrow that you can hate Zionism. Zionism, basically is the belief that the Jews have a legal right to return to their land. We believe both legally and prophetically. You can hate that concept of Zionism, and you can hate the modern state of Israel and still not be an anti-Semite, is basically what's happening. And the ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, is saying, don't do it, Mr. President. You're opening the door to bigots when you shrink the definition of the working definition of anti-Semitism, as you're about to do, and you go to some kind of subpar definition. I mean, that's really the gist of this 2-page letter.
This article is our passwordless future. Our passwordless future, how biometrics, hybrid solutions, and new digital credential technologies are transforming identity verification and everyday life. Well, we already know what they want because the World Economic Forum put it out in one of their digital plans from 2018. I can show that in a minute. You're going to have a digital ID. You won't even be able to get on the internet without the digital ID. So we know that this is where it's going. And it fits with the mark of the beast and everything as well. Wired magazine, your passwordless future. Yeah, we know that because the World Economic Forum has already put it. In fact, I'll bring this up real quick. Let me find it. They've already talked about the digital passport. I've shown this graphic from 2018 where they are, here it is, where they are talking about the fact that, no, that's not it. Hang on, I got a better one than that. Let's see here. Where they're talking about the fact that you won't be able to get online without it. Okay, here it is. You can show that, Logan. Okay, here we go. And notice what the bottom says. I'll try to focus in on the bottom. Look at that. World Economic Forum 2018, Identity in a Digital World, a new chapter in the social contract. So you have to have it to file your taxes, to vote. You have to have it to get on social platforms, to shop online, to travel, your open bank accounts, carry out online financial transactions. So you think they're going to give me a digital passport to continue to operate with an e-business? where you can order books and Christian materials and operate online? I don't think so. And yet, here's Chick-fil-A's guy pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion, which apparently he doesn't realize that this is all playing right into the mark of the beast, I believe, because ESG, diversity, inclusion, and diversity, equity, inclusion is all part of social credit scores or ESG scores for corporations. Then you add in the social credit scores for individuals, and this is all going to be tracking us. And I warned you in 2012, as I said before the break, and I said earlier this week, I wasn't impressed when their leader came out and said, I'm for traditional marriage. I thought that's a good business move. Most of your restaurants are in the South. Great business move. Maybe you really believe it. Maybe you don't. I don't know. Let's see if in the future, when times get hard, you really stand with that. Now, I think that may have been the dad, and I think since the dad's passed away, but the son, I think this is the son that has now come out and said these silly things, and I guess it's been discovered they have a diversity, equity, inclusion officer, so they're going woke. Michael Massey, my friend Michael Massey, wrote an article a few years ago on my website that Chick-fil-A was supporting liberal progressive causes behind the curtain a long time ago. That's according to his article and others that I've read. But now I guess the CEO of Chick-fil-A wants us all to grovel and be ashamed and embarrassed and repent for slavery. I didn't have anything to do with slavery. None of you did either. None of us alive had anything to do with slavery. And I would venture to guess 90+% of our ancestors had nothing to do with it. My family didn't. Yeah, I've got a history here in Tennessee, the South. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, he didn't have slaves. Our family wasn't involved in slavery. So with that, here's the CEO of Chick-fil-A. Listen and watch this.
Some of our closing moments here, but a story that was shared with me by a dear friend who shared with me about a revival that was taking place at a church in Texas. And at that revival, on the front seat was an older African American man that was sitting there. And this young man got up that was there in that service, and he'd been so gripped with conviction about the racism that was in that local community in a small town in Texas that he took a shoe brush and he walked over to this elderly gentleman and he knelt on his knees and began to shine his shoes. And tears began to flow in that service. It was an attitude of conviction. So I invite folks to put some words to action here. And if we need to find somebody that needs to have their shoe shine, we need to just go right on over and shine their shoes. And whether they got tennis shoes on or not, maybe they got sandals on, it really doesn't matter. But there's a time in which we need to have, some personal action here. Maybe we need to give them a hug too, brother.
And some stock in Chick-fil-A.
But I bought about 1,500 of these, and I gave to all our Chick-fil-A operators and staff a number of years ago. And so any expressions of a contrite heart, of a sense of humility, a sense of shame, a sense of embarrassment, beget with an apologetic heart, I think that's...
And this is all in the context of slavery. I wasn't involved in slavery. I wasn't. Why would I be embarrassed? I didn't do slavery. I didn't have anything to do with slavery. In fact, on the contrary, Mr. Chick-fil-A, our organization has been teaching the biblical worldview to the answer to slavery, which is found in the Bible, that we are of one blood. So here's what I ask. Are you promoting creation, biblical creation, and understanding the Bible and the Tower of Babel and where the people groups came from? Or do you believe that we have many people group, many races? You teach the idea there's many races? Or are you smart enough to know, no, there's only one race, the human race? So you can sit there with your little brush and brush the shoes and pull that little stunt and act cute. Reality is, do you even have a worldview that can destroy and destruct the foundation of racism, evolution? Or do you believe in theistic evolution? I dare this man to come on my show live. I dare him. And by the way, the black gentleman he walked over started shining his tennis shoes, I think was Lecrae, a rapper, right? I think that's who that was. Notice Lecrae was like, how about some Chick-fil-A stock? The guy didn't miss a beat and didn't operate it. Well, yeah, if you're so interested in this, why don't you jump in on reparations, Mr. Cathy? Why don't you jump in on reparations? If you're so convicted by this, why don't you jump in on reparations? How many multiple millions are you willing to fork over your family's personal fortune? That's my question for you. But that was just a bunch of symbolism over substance and shaming white people and shaming of a lot of Americans who had nothing to do with it. But I have no time for this foolishness coming from so-called evangelicals, buying into the cultural Marxists to divide this nation and shame people and the nation and the country and Christians who had nothing to do with this. And we as a people have made so much restitution beyond what's even imaginable. So what more would you have us do, Mr. Cathy? And I sure didn't see you offering up any of your stock when he asked for it. Andy? And by the way, this all fits with what I'm talking about, ESG scores. The so-called Christians are going to help roll us right to the ESG, social credit, and the mark of the beast. So here we go back to this article, Technology are laying the foundation for the mark of the beast and end times. No one can buy or sell unless they have the mark. We're not saying this is the mark of the beast, but the technology is being laid. Wired magazine says our passwordless future, how biometrics, hybrid solutions, and new digital credential technology are transforming identity verification and everyday life. And again, that led us off into Chick-fil-A because you now have American corporations and so-called Christians pushing the idea of social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG scores, which all fit with the fact they're going to track you. And, well, those who don't fall in line with the right government worldview will be punished. That's what we're talking about here. That's how we got off onto the Chick-fil-A rabbit trail. Dr. Woods?
Your privacy disappears and your potential of being locked out of the system disappears, and the potential for the social credit score system, which, by the way, is not conspiracy theory. It's currently being practiced in China. It's just a matter of rolling it out worldwide. Is once you move into this kind of system, is the moment you can move us into this social credit score system. But that's why all of this is prophetically significant. It's not the mark of the beast, but it's certainly moving us in the direction of the mark of the beast. But let me read you just one sentence from the article. It's from a European Parliament member who says, quote, "We want the European Union to become the first global region with a governance framework for trusted digital identities," close quote. In other words, they're beta testing this in the region, and ultimately we think the world is going to be divided into 10 regions, but they're beta testing this in the region of Europe or Rome. Well, that fits everything with what we know about Bible prophecy, because we have taught and believed for a long time that based on Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, the Antichrist's empire will initially arise out of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome. That's what the 10 toes on the 2 feet, who, by the way, are connected to the 2 legs of iron representing ancient Rome. These 2 feet, 10 toes are going to rise out of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome. So you're literally watching Bible prophecy leap into fulfillment.
Indeed, we are. All right, so let's go to the next issue, and that is this article right here. Get ready for World ID and World Coin Universal Basic Income, offering free money in exchange for your eyeball scan. Dr. Woods?
Well, this is a fascinating article because we've talked about CBDCs for a long time. Your audience knows what those are, central bank digital currency. This article says, those are yesterday's news. Here's the new thing. And it has to do basically with an eyeball scan, which, of course, all of our eyeballs are, I guess, unique. So that puts us into this massive identifying system. And once you do that, they're talking there in this article how about that's going to pave the way to help the poor. And what they mean by that is what's called a mincome. universal basic income. In other words, it's basically the tool which is going to lead us into one world socialism. So maybe it's not going to be these CBDCs at all. It's like Satan has different routes he can pursue. He can pursue the CBDC route to bring in the mark of the beast system, but there's another rival on the horizon, and maybe the two will merge at some point somehow. And it has to do with this thing called the orb, the world orb, where your eyeball is scanned. And once it's scanned, you're into this new digitized cashless system. And the poor nations of the earth are literally tripping over themselves trying to get their eyeballs scanned because they're promised free goodies as a result. Hey, here's the tool that will lead you into your UBI, universal basic income. So this is all being used for one world socialism, one world communism, which is exactly what Revelation 13, 16 through 18 prophetically anticipates.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to this next one. This is, let's see, what are we under here? We're under technology. Okay, we've covered all those. Let's see this. Oh, we're still under technology. All right, here we go. This is the Times, the UK Times. 3.7 million benefit claims told they don't have to seek work.
Yeah, that's a UK source. And if you don't think that income and universal basic income is about to become a reality, all you have to look at is how we are being conditioned to receive it. And here in the UK, if you're receiving, assistance from the government just came out and told you, hey, finding a job, becoming, economically self-sufficient, independent, industrious. Don't worry about it. The government will take care of you for life, which of course is socialism. It goes right against what God says in his word. 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10. Paul is very clear, if a man will not work, neither shall he eat. Genesis 3, verses 17 through 19 is very clear that although industry and labor was part of God's plan before the fall, because Adam was keeping the garden and tilling it, now after the fall, he has to work by the sweat of his brow. And so, as Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is you run out of OPM, other people's money, and what looks good in a college classroom and what looks good on paper never works because you're rebelling against the principles of God. And this is setting up, I believe, this universal basic income, which will lead to the Antichrist socialistic communist empire, which, like all other experiments of this nature, is destined to fail because it rebels against the principles of the Creator.
Absolutely. Now this brings us to our next point for the week, which is persecution and the growing persecution of Christians, conservatives. Here's an article, How Biden's DHS is Weaponizing an Anti-Terror Program Against Christians, Conservatives, and the GOP.
Yeah, I think that's the Media Research Center. That's Brent Bozell's organization.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you scroll down, there's a graphic there that they're using that really explains it all. That one right there.
Yes.
And you've probably seen this, but it's basically what this is a grant program designed to educate people about terrorism. It was actually started under either Obama or Trump. And what has just happened is the Biden administration, as they're shrinking, this is very interesting, as they're shrinking the definition of anti-Semitism, they're broadening the definition of terrorism, domestic terrorism, to include who? You look at this graphic and you see a Nazi swastika. Okay, that's acceptable. I could see those as domestic terrorists. But you keep reading this, and he's got Breitbart on there. He's got the Heritage Foundation on there. They've got the NRA on there. They've got the Christian Broadcasting Network on there. I guess Christians that watch that are watching something produced by a potential domestic terrorist. You've got Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA on there. And if that's not enough, let's just throw the whole Republican, the elephant there at the bottom.
not only is all that troubling, but I also see JBS, which I guarantee you can't read the small print under that, but I guarantee you that's the John Birch Society. So under at the very foundation of the pyramid of far-right radicalization or potential terrorists by the U.S. government is the John Birch Society, which is the New American, which I'm one of the producers of New American TV. Over my site, my channel, wvwtv.com, every day there's an hour show called New American TV. I'm one of the producers of it. So I guess, again, I'm working with a potential domestic terrorist, John Birch Society, i.e. the New American, which includes Alex Newman, who's going to be one of the speakers at our Ozarks conference, whose show I also carry at WVW-TV. So here they're labeling a group that we work with every day, which is defending and has for generations defended America's sovereignty, and fought globalism. And they're putting them right there in the lump as the foundation for promoting neo-Nazism. Because as you go up the ladder here, up the pyramid, you end up with the swastika. So the neo-Nazism's foundation is the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, the New American, John Birch Society, the NRA. This is the foundation that has built the neo-Nazi movement. I mean, how could it be any other way if the foundation ends up leading 2 blocks up to the swastika? They're saying the foundation for neo-Nazism is Christianity.
And also notice, Brandon, who's missing. I don't see anything there about the actual people running around looting and
Antifa,
arson.
Black Lives Matter.
I don't see anything there about CARE, right?
Right.
What is that? The Center for American Islamic Relations, something like that. I don't see anything there about BLM. I don't see anything there about Jane's Revenge once Roe versus Wade was overturned that actually went and caused property damage.
Right.
I don't see anybody. Did you see that picture of that pro-lifer all bloodied up in the news? I don't see anything there related to his situation. So they're coming up with the definition of terrorism that's very broad, but obviously excludes certain groups. And I want people to understand why this category, domestic terrorism, is such a big deal. Once you call someone a domestic terrorist, you're tried under the Patriot Act.
Yes.
And we can thank George Bush, for that one. The Patriot Act, once you're under that system, you're not entitled to the same rights that typically constitutionally go to criminal defendants. Just ask the J6 protesters that are still languishing in what we would call the American gulag. That's why this expansion of a category to include all of these mainstream conservative groups as domestic terrorists, I think, is paving the way. It's putting into existence the legal pretext leading to, ultimately the persecution of Christianity in the United States.
George in Albany, Illinois, line 2. George, thank you for calling in, George.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I was just going to make a comment that history has already been written. That's how God knows the beginning from the end, and it is His story. We, as His people, have an opportunity to make our story part of His story. And it is through our choices and how we pray and what we ask and how we humble ourselves as to the outcome of our story.
Thank you, George. Laura, line 3. Laura, thanks for calling in, Laura.
Hi. I was going to talk about the beast and how it's given power to speak by the Antichrist.
Okay.
And I think that the beast system, is connected with this whole smart problem, smartphone. Everything's a smart, connected with the smart system.
How so?
Everybody's getting overawed by how smart the computer system is becoming.
And what you're saying is you believe that all of these smartphones and AI will be tied to the beast system.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? How do you see AI, smartphones, smart devices playing in with the mark of the beast system, Dr. Woods?
Well, the founder of the smartphone, the Apple phone, and I quote this Time magazine article frequently. I think it's around 2014. He says, this technology was never designed to just stay on a phone. It was designed ultimately to go into your body. And, we use the word grooming a lot, when we talk about what sexual predators do with young people, to prepare them for greater, sexual exploits, etc., down the road. Well, why don't we adopt a new term called technology grooming? They're grooming us to have something put into our body, which is totally, as the article we mentioned earlier, is totally passwordless. It will be sold to us as under the rubric of convenience. And once that happens, that will be a giant leap into the mark of the beast system, because at will, your privacy is gone and you're shut out of the economy, just like Revelation 13 says. If you happen to buy things or say things or purchase things, give money to things, donate to things that go against the overarching New World Order paradigm narrative.
Well, yeah. It will make persecution of Christians, I guess at that point in the tribulation saints, it'll make persecution of the tribulation saints pretty easy, won't it, Dr. Woods?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Satan, you have to understand, is not God. He's a created being. Ezekiel 28:12-17 says that on the day you were created. So he doesn't have the omnis. He doesn't have omniscience, all-knowing, omnipotence, all power, omnipresence, everywhere at once. So he's always lusted after sort of some kind of surveillance system that allows him to micromanage the entire human race. And he actually gets his hands on that once the mark of the beast system is unveiled.